want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well.
Well, hello.
I'm a double.
Trump is in China, and we're going to talk about that in the show today. Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and we have a massive show ahead for you today. In fact, a debate over AI and the future of this country with this new technology comes up. It gets real spicy, and I'm looking forward to sharing that debate with you. We'll talk a little bit about the effort to sue the New York Times for defamation because the Israelis, on one hand, openly boast about raping Palestinians in these prisons and then get really upset when journalists here in America draw attention to it. So we're going to show you the receipts, and it's an important story to cover. We will be having an interview with Ken Klippenstein today, not only a friend of the show, but one of the best journalists in the country. He uncovered a story about what Trump's counter-terrorism czar is up to, namely labeling American citizens as terrorists, domestic terrorists, if they dare to criticize the war in Iran, if they dare to be critical of Israel's genocide, or if they just happen to be critical of President Donald Trump. So we'll get into that and more. I think the most amazing part of that story, by the way, is that like Trump's counterterrorism czar he's got a thick accent. And it's rich to hear a guy with the thick accent wrongfully and falsely label American citizens for practicing their First Amendment rights domestic terrorists. But anyway, we'll get to all of that later in the show. I do want to start off though with, what Trump is up to with China, but more importantly, how the war in Iran has actually given China an upper hand despite all of the propaganda we hear otherwise. Let's get into it. Turns out that the war on Iran, well, it's been pretty great for China. But, that's not what you're going to hear from some of these ridiculous pro-war morons who say otherwise. They claim, no. The Strait of Hormuz being blocked, that's a good thing. It's destroying China. Is it? Now you might be wondering, what kind of moron is making that point? This guy.
With regard to the Straits of Hormuz, that's a strategic choke point relative to the bigger chess game, which is China-US. President Trump is on his way to speak with Xi when the oil that typically China gets from the Gulf is not coming there. 50% of the oil that goes to China comes from the Gulf. So I think that we're comfortable as Americans with that particular leverage points that we have over China.
That was former IDF Special Forces Commander Doron Kempel claiming that the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is actually fantastic. It's really, really hurting China. Sure, buddy, sure. And we've heard this talking point from members of the Trump administration, just any effort to put lipstick on a pig. The Iran war is incredibly unpopular with the American people and continues to become more and more unpopular because of the economic ramifications of the Strait of Hormuz being closed. And by the way, just a side note, as you can see, I was on that panel when Doron made that point. And I want someone to give me props. For once, give me props for doing what everyone keeps demanding that I do, which is don't interrupt, don't jump down people's throats, keep your tone nice and polite and friendly. Now, in that moment, I did. Later in this debate, I did not. I did direct my ire toward Emily Schrader because she is a disgrace. But anyway, getting back to China, today, the Washington Post published a pretty important story that Americans need to be aware of. It's an exclusive titled, China Gains Major Edge on US Amid Iran War. Intelligence report finds a confidential assessment circulating as President Donald Trump begins his highly anticipated trip to Beijing shows shifts in several key areas of competition. And the thing that we hear about quite a bit when it comes to China is we got to compete, we got to compete, we got to win, we got to win, we got to compete, we got to win the AI race. We ain't winning. And this war has put us in a worse position when it comes to competing with a rising superpower. So the story covers a US intelligence report that was prepared for Joint Chiefs of Staff General Dan Kane. Okay, so it raised alarm within the Pentagon because of the fact that the facts are the facts. And I think we can all see how this war is putting the United States at a disadvantage. Produced by the Joint Chiefs Intelligence Directorate, the report uses what's known as DIME framework to assess China's response to the Iran conflict via 4 instruments of state power: diplomatic, informational, military, and economic. So here's what they found, or what was reported in that intelligence report. Since the war began, China has actually managed to sell weapons to US allies, namely in the Persian Gulf. So these are countries who have invested significantly in US weaponry. They have hosted US military bases under the assumption that the United States would provide a security umbrella to the Gulf region. But we had depleted our missile interceptors. So once Iran started attacking the Gulf countries in retaliation for the United States attacking Iran, well, the US couldn't really do much about it, could they? We couldn't use the remaining missile interceptors on them when we wanted to use them to protect Israel. And so as a result, our Gulf allies turned to China and purchased weaponry from China in an effort to defend themselves. Now, China has also flexed its soft power, and that's honestly the area where I think China excels. Rather than using warfare, they lean into soft power, not because they're altruistic, not because they're, philanthropic or they're really looking out for the world. No, I mean, they see this as an opportunity to, become a trusted rising superpower that countries can trust far more than the United States. That's the point that they're trying to make here. So they flex their soft power by helping countries with their energy needs. And by the way, here's another benefit to China. China has surpassed, they've always been number one, honestly, when it comes to green energy, when it comes to the solar panels, things like that. And so what China has done is it has been reaching out to countries that are energy insecure as a result of this war to let them know, hey, we can help you out. We can, help you with the energy needs by, providing certain elements necessary for the production of renewable energy. So Trump thinks that this war is harming China. I don't know if he genuinely believes that or if that's just the lie he thinks that we're stupid enough to believe, but nonetheless, he says this because they get some of their energy, some of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz. But as Ryan Haas at the Brookings Institution points out, China is the second most insulated country in the world to the energy crisis, only after the United States. China is presenting itself as a solutions provider in providing access to jet fuel and other products that are in short supply as a bridge for the short term. So not only is this war failing to do what supporters of the Iran war keep claiming, it's crushing China, it's actually doing the exact opposite. And by the way, this was already predicted in the very beginning of the war. So Beijing has reached out to Thailand, Australia, the Philippines, and is offering access to Chinese-produced green energy technology. And they are selling it as a long-term solution to energy insecurity. And the report also went into how this war has already drained a massive amount of our munitions. We don't have to get too detailed about that since we've covered that on the show on multiple occasions. But aside from our defensive capability being diminished as a result of us putting our nose into all sorts of foreign conflicts, including providing military aid, endless military aid to Israel, military aid to Ukraine. I'm sure it took some weaponry and some bombs in order to strike fishing boats in the Caribbean. All of that puts you at a disadvantage when you start a brand new war with a country like Iran. And so they warned about that in the intelligence report. And on top of that, the Iran conflict, which has resulted in the damage or destruction of US military hardware and facilities throughout the Middle East, has allowed Beijing to observe how the US fights wars and learn how to plan its own future operations. China has long sought to undermine, they write, the image of the US as a responsible steward of the rules-based international order, and it views the Iran conflict as emblematic of Washington's cavalier approach to military hostilities. I mean, but where's the lie? And I say this as someone who desperately wants my country to be perceived favorably internationally. But that's just not going to happen when you get involved in foreign wars, when you carry out coups, you orchestrate coups of democratically elected leaders, when you aid and abet Israel's expansionist project, the Greater Israel Project, which leads to all sorts of crises, right? We have crises when it comes to refugees fleeing, looking for safety. They go into other countries, and those other countries get really frustrated about it. But what are they going to do? It's the United States. It's a military superpower. So we're just going to shut our mouths and, bend to their will. But it's getting to a point where the international community, I think, has had enough. Because remember, this war against Iran, and it's still ongoing. Sure, there's a ceasefire right now, but the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. Trump has still decided to implement his blockade of the strait. And the idea that this is doing us any favors is laughable. And there's still no indication that the regime in Iran is anywhere near collapse. So the Pentagon's chief spokesperson, Sean Parnell, basically dismissed the intelligence report, which isn't surprising to me whatsoever, because of course he did. Of course he did. That's all you get from this administration. Hey, here are some receipts. We are worried about what this means for America, both economically and in terms of their national security. So what do you have to say about this intelligence report? And he basically dismisses it. Let me give you his exact statement. Assertions claiming that the global balance of power have shifted towards any nation other than the United States of America are fundamentally false. Is that it? Is that all you have to say about this, really? It's a I know you are, but what am I type response. There's no substance there. You're just declaring something without refuting any of the arguments being made in this intelligence report. I'd be shocked if he even read it. He doesn't care. Even more delusional was what White House spokesperson or spokeswoman Olivia Wales had to say. She claimed that the US decimated the Iranian regime's military capabilities in 38 short days and is now strangling what's left of their economy with one of the most successful naval blockades in history. Whatever helps you sleep at night, homegirl. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Despite the now multiple reports, independent reports showing that Iran has still managed to access 30 out of the 33 missile sites along the Strait of Hormuz. They still have 70% of their missiles intact. What about us? Where are we at? You do a comparative analysis and we've depleted our weapons. Whereas Iran, they weren't getting mixed up in a bunch of wars over the last several decades. They've got a nice stockpile. So they can go ahead and lie to us as much as they want. But the truth is that we have already lost this war and we keep losing every single day because every single day the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, gas prices go up, energy prices go up. That in turn means the cost of goods and services goes up. So how is this beneficial for the American people in any way whatsoever? But all right. And while China claims that it wants to help, de-escalate this war and work toward peace, apparently Trump rejected the idea. Take a look.
President Trump continues to say he's under no pressure to make a deal and hasn't given Iran a deadline. But one former U.S. diplomat sees it like this.
The president has been very patient with the Iranians. The Iranians don't see that as patience. They see it as weakness.
And weakness is the exact opposite of what President Trump wants to show China's Xi Jinping this week. As a top buyer of Iranian oil, Xi could help mediate a deal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. But Trump says he's also ready to go it alone.
No, I don't think we need any help with Iran. We'll win it one way or the other.
We'll win it one way or the other. Right, okay. Well, despite Trump's tough talk in the United States, what was really fascinating today was hearing what he had to say about China and its leader during this China summit. So let's take a quick look at that.
We've had a fantastic relationship. We've gotten along. When there were difficulties, we worked it out. I would call you and you would call me. And whenever we had a problem, people don't know, whenever we had a problem, we worked it out very quickly. We're going to have a fantastic future together. Such respect for China, the job you've done. You're a great leader. I say it to everybody. You're a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true. I only say the truth.
He only says the truth, right? He doesn't need China's help in reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Well, to be fair, China doesn't really need to do much to open the Strait of Hormuz for their own purposes, because as Trita Parsi reported today, let's take a look at his post on X. Just before Trump met with President Xi, Iranian news services reported that Chinese ships had begun transiting the Strait of Hormuz under the Iranian mechanism. While Beijing rejects a toll, it has been open to paying an administrative fee for the environmental upkeep of the strait, which is just another way to frame the toll. The agreement neutralizes American pressure on China to side with the US to open the strait, since the waterway is open to China. In fact, it reverses the pressure. If the US stops these ships from transiting as part of the American blockade, Trump will be picking a losing fight with Xi while in Beijing. Instead of Trump pressuring China to help open the strait, China will pressure the US to make sure the strait isn't blocked for Chinese ships. This is yet another way in which Trump's adoption of FDDs, that's an Israeli lobby, proposal for a blockade of the blockade is backfiring on the United States. He's kind of like a smart person, as Trump likes to say about himself. Embarrassing man. But what are Trump's number one priorities? What does he care about more than anything in the world other than pleasuring the Israelis? Well, he loves making business deals on behalf of incredibly greedy corporate executives. So this summit isn't about diplomacy. This summit isn't about how the United States and China can work together to improve the lives of Americans, by the way, right? That's what his number one priority should be. But no, of course not. That's not his priority. His priority is to bring a gaggle of corporate executives to China with him so they can figure out ways to make business deals and profit themselves. Let me give you an example. So this was a list put together by Bloomberg. CEOs joined Trump's trip to China. It lists all of the CEOs involved. You have of course, the CEO of NVIDIA. You have Elon Musk there for Tesla Inc., Tim Cook for Apple, Larry Fink for BlackRock, Steve Schwarzman for Blackstone, Kelly Ortberg for Boeing. I mean, the list goes on and on. So just a murderer's row of people who have raped and pillaged this country of its wealth, and or companies that are looking to do away with American workers so they can further maximize their profits, because it's never enough. Finally, it's worth noting that Trump, brought this group, and apparently he is eager to secure business deals from China in sectors ranging from agriculture and energy to aerospace, including a potential historic order of Boeing jets. This guy gets so H for selling Boeing jets. Like, nothing gets him more excited than selling military weaponry to foreign countries. The US business delegation not only includes companies with significant investments and market share in China, but also firms like Micron Technology Inc., which saw some of its products banned from critical infrastructure by Beijing after failing a cybersecurity review. How nice is that? China has cybersecurity reviews before making deals with foreign countries or foreign companies. Isn't that nice? Wouldn't it be great if we had that? But no, we have a close relationship, a nice little alliance with a country that has taken advantage of us and literally kills people with beeper bombs. I don't want them having anything to do with my cell phone. But Mike Huckabee, who's the US ambassador to Israel, argues that an end to an alliance with Israel means that we're not going to have access to these cell phones anymore. I don't even know the extent to which Israel is involved in the manufacturing of our iPhones, but I'm not interested in them. And I would rather buy a phone that costs 2 times more, but doesn't have Israel's grubby little hands all over it. Wouldn't want my phone to blow up on me. But anyway, it's infuriating that we don't have a political class that gives a damn about the very people it is supposed to represent. It's disgusting. But what's even worse about this situation is that we have a president who has taken our position on the global stage and just crushed it, squandered it, destroyed it, all because he wants to carry out the best wishes, the well wishes, whatever Israel wants, he's gonna do. And we're paying the price for it. So congratulations, America. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, Ken Klippenstein will be joining us to talk about how our government is looking to label us as domestic terrorists if we criticize them. We'll be right back.
I'm like a smart person.
All I ask of you going forward is keep fighting forward, okay? But we don't fight with arms and physical and any of that, right? We fight with love, we fight with peace, we fight with hope and belief and faith in one another. And we do that's right with knowledge and facts and truth and things that are real. Yeah. Objective reality matters. So much of our audience is scientists, teachers, engineers, data analysts, people who believe in objective reality, right? So thank you guys for believing in that. Thank you for believing in hope, and thank you for making it happen. I appreciate all of you.
I really love what y'all do on the Young Turks, man, and it's a very refreshing, voice. Y'all don't lean to one side. I tell people all the time, if you want to go really hear what's going on honestly in our society, you should tune in to the Young Turks.
Thank you, Charlemagne. We appreciate that.
That's awesome. Really appreciate it, brother.
In the bonus episode for members, we do things that are really productive and healthy and good for you, like fruit. Just kidding. We get the inside scoop. Ice cream cam. Come on, man. Come inside the bonus episodes and you're gonna love it. Embarrassing details about our lives, what kind of ice cream we eat.
No, way saucier than that.
They're tyt.com/team. Get the inside scoop. Ice cream cam.
Welcome back to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and a topic that's been coming up a lot lately, especially with AI taking over, AI data centers, those autonomous cars, autonomous food delivery things. I don't even know what you call those. They're all built with a ton of cameras. They're all surveilling us. It's very obvious. And that's something that we should be concerned about, especially since if you look at what's going down with the federal government, they're looking to label American citizens as domestic terrorists over nothing. And if you don't believe me, I'm about to show you the receipts and the incredible reporting behind it. Let's get into it.
I had, sadly, a putative conservative journalist today from the Daily Caller ask me an asinine question. He said, how is the operation against Iran not another forever war? I'm not sure that Nick Fuentes or Tucker Carlson are conservatives. If you are lauding a Sharia law,
even the left, I'm shocked. They are so on their heels. I did a kind of press call when we released the strategy. 50 articles were written that day about the press call. Only one of them from those putzes at Politico was even slightly negative.
Sebastian Gorka, who sadly is Trump's counterterrorism czar, is basically on a mission to label anyone who criticizes Trump, Israel, or the war on Iran as a domestic terrorist. And as you just heard from that video, he is questioning the conservative, credibility of people like Tucker Carlson, who would ban abortion, period, or Nick Fuentes, who I don't pay attention to, and I don't know how conservative he really is. However, we do know, thanks to incredible reporting by Ken Klippenstein, that there is this effort to essentially slap that label onto Americans, and we should be concerned about it. So the piece is titled "New Counterterror Strategy Eyes Tucker Carlson." You could read it over at Substack. Administration deems anti-Trump right-wingers terrorists. In it, Klippenstein writes that Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes have been named by the White House as possible domestic terrorists, according to the Trump administration's top counterterrorism official, Sebastian Gorka. Gorka, by the way, is a former right-wing influencer who somehow made his way to an official position with the Trump administration. But between grandiose monologues about his vision of a crusade to save Western civilization from anti-American and anti-Christian extremism, Gorka lets slip that the administration's war on domestic terrorism isn't just aimed at the left, which, by the way, would be bad enough. It targets anyone who isn't in line with the broader MAGA agenda, while Trump's National Security Directive, NSPM 7, explicitly singles out the left with its list of so-called terrorism indicators. Many of them could describe people on the right as well. Well, luckily, here to answer some questions about this and give us some more insight, we have friend of the show, Ken Klippenstein, with us right now. Ken, thank you for, first of all, doing this report, but also for joining us.
Hey, Anna, great to be back with you.
Awesome. So let's just do a real quick refresher, right? Because we have covered the NSPM 7 story that you did earlier, but for those who might have missed it, tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so NSPM 7 stands for National Security Presidential Memorandum 7. It was signed into law by President Trump, and it is a directive that, long story short, defines a number of so-called indicators of future acts of terrorism. And those indicators include extremely broad categories like anti-Christian sentiment, anti-traditional family values sentiment, and extreme views on immigration. I mean, these are huge categories. What it does, it tells the entire federal government, hey guys, we're gonna prioritize this for the rest of the administration. Make your FBI, make cases around this. Treasury, go through their tax returns, see if you can find evidence of illegality. We're going after these guys. And so what happened this month was Gorka, who runs the entire counterterrorism portfolio under the Trump administration, he's in the White House National Security Council. He put out what's called the National Counterterrorism Strategy, which is the high level kind of governing document for the entirety of the national security state, saying here's our priorities going forward specific to counterterrorism. And it echoed a lot of NSPM 7, a lot of those indicators of future acts of terrorism that I was describing before. But what's extraordinary about this document is it's the first one ever. I mean, every administration has a national counterterrorism strategy. This is the first one that articulates American citizens as targets. And if you look at the section that lists its 3 main priorities, it is narco groups, Islamist terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and the third one is the radical left. And the reason I did this story was because I wanted to stress to people, particularly on the right or people who maybe are independents, don't consider themselves on the left, that they are not exempt from this because the admin can just go around and redefine arbitrarily what they consider to be the right. And that's what he did when he was asked about by editor-in-chief of Breitbart, are there any right-wing people that represent terrorist or extremist threats? And Gorka said, well, people like Tucker Carlson, we don't even really consider them right. So I don't think it's fair to put them in that. And then he cited his example. He says he is pro Islamic law. Yeah, Sharia law. And I went and looked at the example because anyone who knows anything about Tucker is kind of like, what? I don't think, unless he's radically changed in the last several months, I don't think he is. So I looked it up and he was making some comment about visiting Saudi Arabia and how people seemed more welcoming and hospitable there than he thought that they would be. And he said it was a Sharia law state. And despite that, they seemed open to his Christianity. That is not pro-Sharia law.
Wait, I'm sorry. Saudi Arabia, the country that we're kind of aligned with and do business deals with and sell weapons to. So is the entirety of the federal government basically a group of terrorists because they're selling weapons, agreeing to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, this is what people aligned with Trump have been saying about Carlson. One commentator, Laura Loomer, she's been saying he's, backed by Qatar. And, how can he be critical of this war in Gaza unless he's on the take or something? And there's no evidence for any of that. It could just be he thinks these things. And I wish that as a country, we could appreciate that more, because I so often, it's not just Gorka, I see so often people are like, oh, you're clearly getting paid by this, or you got tricked by bots here. It's like, maybe people just think things. Whatever happened to people and they can even be wrong, but maybe they're wrong because they came to their own conclusions that were wrong. Can't that be a possibility? But that's the backdrop of all of this terror obsession, is that everyone is an actor on behalf of something else. And it's just so out of control.
I mean, I'm going to throw egg on my own face right now because years ago, I made that terrible mistake. There was something that Aaron Mate, who's a great reporter, had reported that I disagreed with. And I let people get into my head and make me think that he's like some sort of Russian agent. And I made a accusation against him that he could have easily sued me for, by the way. That was totally unfounded. So like, for anyone who's watching this, please don't fall prey to those ridiculous claims, right? And I apologized to him years later, which is embarrassing, but just when people tell you that they believe something, okay, engage with the substance of their argument as opposed to dismissing them as someone who's being paid to say X, Y, or Z. In the case of Tucker Carlson, he hasn't gone through some extreme, evolution or change. The one area where I think he has grown a little bit is he went from saying pretty hideous things about Muslims back in the day to, I think, understanding now that a lot of that propaganda was meant to, manufacture consent for Israel's wars in the Middle East. And so he's been speaking out against that on his show quite regularly. Candace Owens is doing the same. And I think that's part of the reason why they're drawing the ire of people they used to be fully aligned with. Okay, so what exactly are the so-called terror indicators outside of what you've described? Is there anything else that they're looking at?
Yeah, so the way that the document, and I would encourage everyone to go read it, it's up on the White House page. There's been pitifully little media reporting, just independent shows like yours having me on talk about it. And Gorka at the top, the clip you played, they're spiking the football. They're slapping each other on the back, thrilled at how little critical reporting they're getting for this. And he's publicly bragging about it. I couldn't believe that. And he's right. He's right.
He's so right. No, I thank you for sharing this video, Ken, because I think our audience needs to see it. Here's Sebastian Gorka confessing that our media does not work for us, the American people, at all. They provide cover. Let's take a look at let's go to C2.
Even the left, I'm shocked. They are so on their heels. I did a kind of press call when we released the strategy. 50 articles were written that day about the press call. Only one of them from those putzes at Politico was even slightly negative. The rest was pretty accurate reporting. So we are moving so fast, they just can't keep up with us, which is delicious.
It's wonderful.
And of course, by accurate reporting, he means reporting that's favorable, the propaganda that supports what I'm doing. It's unbelievable, Ken. I mean, what do you think is the reason for that? Do you think it's because legacy media outlets like this and they don't want to draw any negative attention to it?
Well, on the topic of national security, which is what I tend to focus on in the newsletter that I run, the reason I do that is because it's so arcane, it's a little bit complicated. You have to have a bit of a background in it to understand how to decode the terminology that they use. But to answer the question you posed before, some of the stuff is just like on its face crazy. I don't know what other word to use for it. So if you read that national counterterrorism strategy, it defines left-wing radical terrorism. It says transgender extremism. And it lists, I mean, it's like, and there's no evidence. There's no like, here's why we think this or why that constitutes a threat. So they very clearly are going through and just looking at like cultural markers that they can then define. And it's not, it goes beyond even that because they included those two conservative figures we mentioned before. So, and that's the point I'm trying to stress to people is it's like, it is pointed at the left, but not just the left. Because I think that's the message that's getting lost. To the extent that there was any discussion of this at all, there was a little bit of like, oh, it mentions the domestic American left. And that is unprecedented. You don't do that. You're supposed to target groups overseas. And because the whole point is terrorism as an approach is essentially pre-crime. You can open an investigation to someone without a crime having been committed. Because the idea is that 9/11 or something like it, nuclear attack or something, a suitcase bomb, is so dangerous that we're going to suspend the usual Fourth Amendment protections we have where you bring before a judge evidence of something having been committed. And you can actually preempt the crimes. Well, how do you do that? You monitor speech, and that is what those indicators are for. And so they're going to be looking at people that match whatever their definition of gender extremism or extreme views on immigration or whatever it is, and that's really dangerous.
Yeah, it's interesting because right now, this might be the first time in my adult life where I'm noticing that ordinary voters, both on the left and the right, are finding common ground on some pretty big issues, whether it's the war in Iran, whether it's our alliance with Israel, and they're becoming increasingly vocal about it and actually flirting with the idea of working together to kind of change our system and go in a different direction. And so I think the biggest mistake Americans can make is seeing everything through a partisan lens where they think like, oh, it's my guy doing this to punish the other side. I'm going to be safe. It's going to be fine. But no, when you are willing to turn a blind eye to abuses of power, especially when the government is carrying it out, they're going to come for you too. Trust me. And that's what we're seeing here right now. I want to go to one other video that you shared that I thought was telling. So Gorka says anyone asking how the Iran war is going is just a moron, and no, like this is going well, and anyone questioning it as another forever war is a moron, essentially. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
I had, sadly, a putative conservative journalist today from the Daily Caller ask me an asinine question. He said, how is the operation against Iran not another forever war? The idea, I mean, you just have to be either low T or you have to be mentally challenged to compare decades of forever wars with thousands of American casualties to the pinpoint accuracy of what we're doing in Operation Epic Fury with no boots on the ground.
So the Daily Caller, for anyone who might not be familiar, is a conservative outlet. So a conservative journalist asked him that question, which is a perfectly valid question to ask. And that was his reaction. So my question to you, Ken, is could being vocal and incredibly critical against the war be one of the markers that Gorka uses to label you a domestic terrorist?
Absolutely, because that is what describes those two figures we were talking about before, Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson. They broke with Trump very bitterly over the Iran war in particular, and that is why they're on the outs. Before that, Tucker was close with Trump and endorsed him, has since apologized for his endorsement. So there was a relationship there which no longer exists because of exactly the issue that Gorka here in the video you just played is saying not only is ridiculous and idiotic to ask, but he's questioning the conservative bona fides of the journalist asking him it. He's doing the exact same thing as he is to the other two. And so what this provides us is a hint about how the administration sees these terms when they're going around saying, oh, we only focus on the left. Well, but you just move the goalposts around to redefine that as being whoever it is that you're in conflict with.
Yeah, I'm also wondering how this would work, right? So let's say Gorka decides to label certain people in this country, falsely label them as domestic terrorists. What happens then?
So I think when people look at something like that, they tend to go to the extreme and say, oh, or is it going to be like extraordinary rendition and someone shot? That's like the extreme end that we really don't want it to get towards. But at the beginning of the spectrum, we're already seeing things happening, which is having a chilling effect on speech. I have interviewed protesters that have been visited by the FBI over what is clearly an SPM7 related pretext, and then tell me, well, no crime was alleged, nothing happened, I'm fine, but I'm a little bit scared. Maybe I won't go to the next protest. That's what we're seeing at cities across the country. We've seen that in Portland as well, in Chicago, and I'm sure countless examples that haven't even been reported, because a lot of these people are just young people, ordinary people going to a protest, and they don't necessarily have the microphone of being able to go on a national news outlet, or they're just scared and don't want to talk. I've had several cases like that where people don't want to go public. So we're already seeing the chilling effect. The other part that we're not seeing is what intelligence work they're doing. By the time they end up filing charges, that is a late stage in the game. The FBI frequently will spend years investigating something before they feel they have something strong enough to take to court, or they just want to gather intel and they don't want to make it public, because when you go to court, then some of the information gets out there. So the answer is intelligence stuff, and what that is specifically, we don't know, because that's how intelligence stuff works. And that's what I would be worried about right now.
And if you don't know, it's hard to challenge what the federal government is doing in court, right? I mean, how are you going to know they're doing this? How are you going to know they're collecting or surveilling you and collecting information about you and your whereabouts, what you're doing, who you're messaging? I mean, this is crazy stuff. And to your point about the failure in our media, that makes it more difficult for some of the possible good actors in our government to potentially sue the Trump administration over this, to prevent it from happening, or to fight back in any way. So it's not good, and I'm grateful that you're reporting on it at least. Has anyone shown you any interest in this reporting from legacy media?
No. And it's kind of funny because the picture is so distinct. Legacy media, almost zero interest in it, as Gorka said, like, what was it, 1 out of 16 or even slightly negative. But on the part of independent media, it has been overwhelming, including conservative media. I watched Alex Jones had a segment on it, and it was actually pretty good. And it makes me think,
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah, and it makes me think, like, man, maybe if there could just be more reporting of this sort, we have some infrastructure to be able to get stuff out there, even if it doesn't reach the kind of big corporate outlets. Because yeah, the independent media, they were incensed about this, and not just the left. There were some really big conservative commentators I saw talking critically about this, which I hadn't expected. So that says to me, I need to stress more the stakes that people who are not just on the left have in regards to this stuff, because there's a lot.
Absolutely. So for everyone who's watching this right now, when we upload this video, please share it and share it with anyone you can. Share it on your socials, because we want to build a critical mass that pushes back against this. It's wrong to see someone like Gorka brag about how he's getting away with it, and he's getting away with it due to the failures of our legacy media. So again, Ken, thank you for your reporting. Everyone go check out his work over at Substack. It's an incredible news. I don't even like calling it a newsletter. I feel like that minimizes what you do, to be honest with you. But excellent reporting as always. Thank you so much, Ken.
Thanks so much, Anna. Good seeing you again.
Good to see you too. All right, everyone, we're going to take a brief break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes to give you more news. Stick around. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our first social break because we had to, use our last break to bring Ken in for that interview, which I hope you guys enjoyed, although it's bad news. Art Guy writes in and says, but Anna, we like it when you interrupt and tear shreds off people. Not everyone loves it, trust me. And they do try to bait you. I've recognized that because they make the argument that someone who loses their cool has no credibility, which I don't buy for a second, but unfortunately a lot of other people do buy that argument. But anyway, Eclectic Miscellanea says, it's a surprise Anna solo hour and an interview with Ken Klippenstein later. I can think of no better way to start off my Thursday night with the dumpster fire that is America. Yeah. Oh God, I love Thursday nights. Thursday nights means no makeup for the next 3 days. It's nice. Anyway, by the way, Alyssa, I didn't have my Wednesday night beer. I decided to be a good girl yesterday, but maybe tonight, maybe I'm gonna get a little wild tonight with a bottle of IPA. Anyway, Rap writes in and says, this is off subject, but Anna's makeup is flawless. And I heard she does it herself. I do. You think I can afford a makeup artist? That's crazy. The lighting is perfect too. Go on with your bad self. Thank you so much. All right, those were our members. Let's go to our Twitch subs where we have no time left. We have to go back to the show, but I will read more of your comments a little later. Let's get back to the program. Welcome back to the show, everyone. For those of you who are curious, you can find Ken's work over at Substack. So just go to Substack, search his name. You'll see his newsletter, for lack of a better term. And please you can be an unpaid subscriber. That's totally fine, but share his work because he does important work that has to do with our civil liberties. Anyway, let's get to our next story.
No, you didn't. You didn't witness that, Anna, because that's not what the footage shows, and that actually has been investigated in the courts.
I watched the video myself. You
interrupted me, as a matter of fact.
I have a screenshot. I'll share it immediately after this interview.
I have a screenshot too, Anna. In fact, I have a screenshot of you defaming me on social media, calling me a traitor to the United States when you have no such evidence.
You are a traitor to the United States. Go ahead and sue me. You're about to see more of that debate in just a moment. But before we get to that, Israel has declared that they plan to sue the New York Times over Nicholas Kristof's report on the sexual abuse of Palestinian detainees in Israeli prisons. Of course they are. Now, Kristof's column, for those of you who somehow missed it, alleged a pattern of widespread Israeli sexual violence against men, women, and even children by soldiers, settlers, interrogators in the Shin Bet Internal Security Agency, and above all, prison guards. So I do not want to get back into the details of that story because it is really, really difficult to read and it makes you want to lose all hope in humanity. It's just some of the most vicious crimes against humanity you can imagine. And the Times of Israel reports that Israel's foreign ministry has alleged that the Times deliberately published Kristof's column ahead of an independent Israeli report that found Hamas had systematically, that word is really important, systematically used sexual violence in the onslaught of October 7th, 2023, which sparked the war in Gaza. The foreign ministry claimed that the Times had been approached with the Israeli report months ago. So what? First of all, the New York Times can publish whatever the hell they please, whenever they want to publish it. That's not a crime. And suing for defamation, I don't even know if that's possible to do by a foreign country. Are they going to have standing? Besides which, defamation is going to be really difficult to prove, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. But before I do, let me just note that the commission report that was referenced by the Times of Israel is something that we are also going to talk about a little later in this segment. So just hold on for that. But again, I mean, the claim that the New York Times published this story when they knew a commission report was going to come out around the same time. That's not a crime. Like, I don't know why they even mentioned that. Like, what kind of reporting is that? Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu weighed in on this as well, saying, today I instructed my legal advisors to consider the harshest legal action against the New York Times and Nicholas Kristof. You're a war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu. You are literally wanted. There's a warrant out for your arrest by the International Criminal Court. You're a war criminal. You have slaughtered so many people, including journalists, doctors, aid workers, emergency workers. Like, the idea that this guy has a moral high ground on literally anything is laughable. But generally speaking, foreign countries don't have legal standing in defamation suits in the United States. And besides which, defamation suits in the United States between two people living in the United States, incredibly difficult to win. Incredibly difficult to win because you have to prove actual malice. In this case, there was no actual malice, and there's no indication that Kristof did anything to defame Israel. Israel defames itself every single day by their own actions. Okay, I mean, it's amazing, but okay. I actually think that it would be fantastic, absolutely fantastic, if some way, somehow, this defamation suit goes to court. Because if it goes through a typical discovery process, oof. I jump in it. I would love it. I would absolutely love it. Because when you consider what Israelis say in Israel openly, candidly, on broadcast television, can you imagine what they're willing to say behind the scenes? Private emails, text messages, things like that. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what it would be like for the New York Times in this lawsuit to get footage, surveillance footage from these prisons where these Palestinian detainees are being raped? I say that they move forward with this lawsuit. I don't know if they're able to actually do it, but if they are, that could actually be very enlightening for the American people. But with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about what you can hear if you're living in Israel and watching their entertainment and their news programs. So here's Hanok Milwitsky, who's a Likud member of the Knesset, basically shouting that everything is legitimate when he was asked if it's okay for IDF soldiers to use metal rods to anally rape Palestinian detainees. So this is going to be in Hebrew, and when we come back from the video, I'll go ahead and read you the transcription of it. Take a look.
שיש מי שבפרקליטות חושב שאפשר לבוא ולעצור חיילים על דברים שעושים למחבלי נוח'בה, לא נגמר. להמשיך כרגיל.
להכניס מקל לרקטום של בן אדם, זה לגיטימי?
כן, אם הוא נוח'בה, הכל לגיטימי לעשות לו. הכל. הכל.
Okay, so the man that's challenging Hanok is MK Ahmed Tibi. For the audio listeners who are wondering what Hanok said, here's the transcription, okay? Quote, the insanity that our country is having around this story is crazy, and we need to stop it. I think we need to set a personal example here. And I say now, and I call on my coalition friends to do the same. Okay, well, what is he calling for? I will stand up and I will leave this place and I will not vote for anything until this story and this insanity that there is someone in the prosecutor's office who thinks that this is possible to come and arrest soldiers for things they are doing to the Qassam brigades, terrorists. So basically he argues that once he's challenged, you think it's okay to use the metal rods to rape detainees in these prisons? Here's what he says, quote, yes, if he is in the Qassam brigades, everything is legitimate, everything. That Palestinian man never stood trial for anything. There was no indication, there's no proof, there's no conviction that that guy was a terrorist. And he was gang raped by IDF soldiers and it was all caught on surveillance, all of it. There are other examples too, especially on, and unsurprisingly on, Israel's Channel 14. Let's take a look at that.
הגעת עם נשק, הגעת עם כלב, מי זה הכלב הזה? הכלב הזה זה ג'אנגו, איתי בכל פעילות, איתי במילואים. ג'אנגו? היה בעזה. כלב גבעות, יש לומר. ככה אמא שלי קוראת לי אגב, ג'אנגו. כן, כן. טיפל קצת בנוח'בות בסט תימן, עשה הרבה.
אל תגיד דברים ש...
בקיצור, אותו מג"ד.
So the host asks the soldier, the IDF soldier, about his dog, Django, and that the dog took care of some prisoners at the notorious Sid Timan prison, and that they did a lot, that the dogs did a lot. They're bragging about the dog rape on Channel 14. They're bragging about it. An IDF soldier is on Channel 14 in Israel freaking bragging about it. So I'd like to ask Netanyahu, who are you gonna sue, bitch? For defamation? You're gonna go after that IDF soldier for saying that the canines are used to take care of the Palestinians? Freaking monsters, man. Freaking monsters. And then they have the audacity to point to people like us and act like we're the bad guys. Oh, they're anti-Semitic. Are we? Or do we care about humanity? This has nothing to do with Judaism. This has to do with human decency. This has to do with Israel's crimes against humanity. That's what this has to do with. And even some comedians are, doing crowd work that involves poking fun at prison rape. Let's look at that example.
There are people who have done what? And what do you say? You are sitting in the dark. What is the absolute worst thing you've done to them? Come on now, come on. Make us blush just a little bit.
I exercise my right to remain silent.
That is really quite nice. I love it.
That is wonderful. The entire audience, those guilty of crimes against humanity, are all applauding. Wonderful.
What else? And they regret it and say, oh, no, I've seen enough. We need to move on to other things. Do they apologize or something? What do I think? I don't know what you did. If his mouth is sealed and he can't speak, then he can just go, oh, no. I don't know what you did. Do they also choose, like, can you only with a broomstick? They're like asking him.
Yeah. Real funny. There's a sickness in the society there. That wasn't funny. That was just joking around about something that everyone seems to acknowledge is happening. And what's happening is a crime. What's happening is beyond immoral, beyond. And Nick Kristof is the bad guy because he's reporting on it. Amazing, really incredible stuff. And honestly, that's how normalized raping Palestinians in prisons is apparently in Israel. That's insane, but Emily Schrader thinks that Kristof should have been fired over doing his job and reporting on something that honestly in legacy media, it takes a lot of courage to report on. Because we know legacy media provides cover for Israel day in, day out. But Kristof decided, you know what, I'm gonna do some real journalism here. I'm gonna go to the West Bank, I'm gonna talk to people and figure out what's going on. Here's what Emily Schrader said. Nick Kristof should really be fired over this. Yeah, Israeli propagandist who gets laundered as a journalist here in the United States has thoughts on journalism. And this topic came up during Piers Morgan Uncensored, and here's how it went down.
In fact, I would probably have been more likely to believe some of the claims that were made by Kristof if it had been done as a news article.
We all witnessed an IDF gang rape of a Palestinian hostage in one of these.
You didn't witness that, Anna, because that's not what the footage shows, and that actually has been investigated in the courts.
I watched the video myself.
You interrupted me, as a matter of fact.
There was a group of IDF soldiers who were caught on surveillance footage. This is a video I watched. This is a video that many people have seen themselves. The gang rape happens, okay? The Palestinian man who suffered that sexual abuse had internal injuries that were so bad that he had to be in the hospital for weeks upon weeks, okay? They used objects to rape him anally. I mean, it was one of the most horrific things I've ever witnessed myself. And you know what happened, Pierce, after there was some indication that maybe, just maybe, these IDF soldiers would suffer some punishment for what they did? There were protests in Israel. There was rage over the notion that they would ever suffer any consequences for what they did. And later, they were made to be television stars. They were brought on interview shows, celebrated. There is a sickness in the society right now. So that's how that went down. Emily Schrader is a disgrace, absolute disgrace. On one hand, I mean, look, the first question in that debate went to me. Piers Morgan asked me about some Israeli commission report about rapes that took place on October 7th. I hadn't heard of that report, so I didn't even get a chance to read it or comment on it. But I made it abundantly clear. It's wrong regardless of who carries it out. Period. It's not that difficult to respect the humanity of, civilians, human beings. It's not that hard to say rape shouldn't take place, period. It's not difficult. But Emily seemed to have a difficult time acknowledging the reality on one side, while, of course, emphasizing the importance and the credibility and the merit of that commission report, which, again, we're going to get to in just a second, because the credibility has been called into question. Because remember, the argument that the Israelis are trying to make is that Hamas systematically raped Israelis. It's a tool of war that they use. But there's no evidence of that. Do I deny that Hamas has ever raped an Israeli? No, of course I don't deny that. Of course that's happened. But systematically? I'm gonna need to see some hard evidence for that. We'll get back to that in just a second, though, because I want to get to Shael. Shael Ben Ephraim is just an incredible person. He was an IDF soldier turned whistleblower. So there are good people who are firm believers in Zionism. They even serve in the IDF, and then they realize, oh my God, what is this? I don't want to be part of this. And he is now a pretty hardcore whistleblower. I'm sure many of you have seen him on X blowing the whistle day in and day out. In fact, I believe he might have been one of the sources for Nick Kristof's reporting. Don't quote me on that, it's my speculation. But nonetheless, I want to go to what he had to say in the context of this debate.
Nick Kristof is working in an environment where he can't investigate properly because the authorities aren't letting him. So he's doing the best he can as a journalist in order to force the authorities to investigate it. That's the whole point here. There have been absolutely no convictions, no serious investigations into any cases of wrongdoing. Not only has no one been imprisoned, but no one's even been removed from their jobs, despite one investigation into a murder and another investigation into a brutal sexual assault. So what Kristof is doing is he's going into an environment where the authorities are in no way willing to cooperate and breaking the lid of silence. And that's not the same as a commission that has the cooperation of the authorities, that has the cooperation of the military that's in control of the area and is able to do that kind of forensic evidence.
I thought that was a really important point for him to make. And I'm grateful for him every single day because, he's someone who witnessed things himself. He is an Israeli. He served in the IDF and he is informing people about what's really going on. And that's so necessary right now. Now, what he was referencing there was the report that I've been kind of talking about a little bit here. It's the Israeli Civil Commission, which purports to provide evidence of widespread systematic rapes being carried out by Hamas on October 7th. Now, that report has been called into question due to the fact that it turns out that there was no commission. It just has an investigation done by one person. And that one person has had some serious credibility issues in the past. So as Aaron Mate writes on X, the author of this report is a documented fraudster and grifter who even Israeli officials have faulted for inaccurate research. The report approvingly cites other documented fraudsters, including those who spread the beheaded babies hoax, which I sadly fell for myself. And I will always apologize when I get something wrong. I was naive. I just didn't think that anyone would be disgusting enough to make something like that up. But I've learned my lesson. With that in mind, I looked into what Mate was claiming here to confirm it, right? Because I want to make sure I'm not accusing someone of wrongdoing when there isn't any real evidence of it. And it turns out that Mate is correct. So the Israeli publication Ynet reported that Kochev Elkayam Levy is the person who put out the report and is not credible. So an Israeli government source told the paper, quote, people disconnected from her I'm sure that means like distance themselves from her because her investigation is not accurate. So the source specifically cited how she spread a false story about Palestinian fighters slicing the belly of a pregnant woman, a story that was proven later to be untrue. And she spread it all over the international media. I remember that story. And so the Israeli government source who spoke to Ynet said the following: "It's no joke. Little by little, professionals have begun to distance themselves from her because she is unreliable." The paper had also exposed that she tried to pass off, this is amazing, she tried to pass off an old picture of a deceased Kurdish fighter in a completely different country as one of the Israeli October 7th victims. So that's a problem. That's a huge problem. And there's more. So in order to carry out this report, you're gonna ask the government for grants, for money, just like is the case here in the United States, right? If you want to carry out a certain report on behalf of the government, you're going to ask for a grant. That's what she did, okay? So apparently to fund this civil commission, you hear commission, you think there's going to be multiple people involved, it's just her. She says that the commission needed $8 million for its work in 2024, of which 1.5 million would go to management and administration. Management of what? It's a one-person shop. But there is no commission, and she's the only person in this investigation. As Ynet reports, the Israeli government official or a government source told them, at first she really was very active and it was very nice. And then she started calling herself civil commission. People got confused. Members of the US Congress turned to people who work with Israel and asked what this was about. Did Israel create a commission? It's a confusing name. And to the question of, is there such a thing at all? Is there such a body? The answer is no. She is the body. She is the civil commission. Wow. And you should take a look at what Channel 13 in Israel had to say about her. This is Raviv Drucker, and he also seems to call her credibility into question. Take a look.
צריך לומר, גם הנציבות האזרחית זה שם מאוד מפוצץ, הנציבות זאתי, והיא זאת הנציבות, אין איזה גוף גדול שנציבות שפועלת בכל העולם, זאתי פעולתה ברוכה, זה שרק היא מקבלת, מוזר מאוד.
So Drucker says they mention her starting a civil commission to raise awareness. It bears mentioning that the name civil commission is very bombastic. The commission is her and she is the commission. So I'm showing you Israeli media, homeboys and homegirls. I'm not making this up. This is what Israel has to say about her, while this commission and this report is being sold to Americans as credible. Again, I don't doubt that there have been instances of rape carried out. The question is whether or not it was a tool of war that was systematically used by Hamas. The other thing that I find a little strange, and Israelis bordering Gaza also find a little strange, is that their home surveillance was deleted. You know, their outside surveillance cameras, the footage was deleted by the government. Why? Why? Why did they delete that? That's kind of weird. Haaretz reported on that, and I find that incredibly strange. So look, at the end of the day, my take is go ahead, Israel, go ahead and sue the New York Times. Hopefully you're able to do it. And I hope we go through a nice lengthy discovery process. But my suspicion here is that they're using the Alan Dershowitz model of trying to intimidate people into silence. And that is to threaten lawsuits. He's done it to me. And I said, bring it on. I didn't say anything defamatory. I'm ready to go. Did he sue me? No, of course not. He doesn't want to go through a discovery process, of course. So I think that's what this is really about. And hopefully Christoph, along with the entirety of the New York Times, their management, stick by him and stick by their reporting and refuse to be intimidated. We'll see. For now, we're gonna take a quick break and we'll be back with the second hour, including Tulsi Gabbard maybe getting raided, maybe not. What's going on? I'll break it all down for you.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
rich and powerful men abusing, assaulting, and abandoning young women. These rich and powerful men donate to the politicians in Washington, D.C., play golf with the elites in Washington, D.C. They are foreign leaders who we don't want to offend. They interact with our intelligence agencies that we don't want to disobey. There is something rotten in Washington.
And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
All those congressmen you just saw there are on the record as protecting the child rapists who were clients of Epstein. They have not prosecuted a single person outside of Epstein and Maxwell.
Yep.
Not one.
Is Trump engaging in this cover-up because he's in the Epstein files?
I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff.
So as the government keeps telling us, yeah, there's other people. Yeah, they raped those girls. So what? We're gonna cover up for them. But why are you guys so mad?
A nation that chooses impunity for the rich and the powerful at the expense of our children is a nation that has lost its moral purpose. Are you on the side of the people? Are you on the side of America's children? Or are you on the side of the rich and powerful who've had their thumb on the scales and shafted Americans for decades?
The rest of the news media says you should not fight for positive change. If you do, you're not really a reporter or a journalist, because reporters and journalists don't care what happens. I don't agree. That's not written anywhere. That's not a law. It's just a rule that they invented so that reporters didn't actually challenge the people that are in power. Well, we don't agree with that. We think we should challenge the people in power, that actually makes you a better journalist, not a worse one.
Who do you guys use?
We have AT&T.
And how much do you pay per month?
$345, and that includes a company discount.
How many people?
5 phones.
$70 a line, right? I've started a wireless company called Noble Mobile that is trying to cut everyone's bills in half.
What would like a family of 4 cost?
The average Noble Mobile user is paying $42 a month, but also they're using their smartphone 17% less.
Okay. How does that work out?
We give you $20 back in cash every month based upon how much data you use or don't use. You know when you're doom scrolling or messing around on your phone, you're like, oh wait, I'm actually costing myself money right now. The goal with Noble Mobile is to encourage us to look up at our children's lovely faces, like touch grass, appreciate life. A friend of mine calls these things our rectangles of sadness. So we're trying to change that and improve everyone's relationships with their phones.
It's a very noble cause.
Well, thank you, sir. That's what it is. Been on YouTube for 20 years.
The original political partner on YouTube, the Young Turks.
The Young Turks.
The Young Turks.
Godfather of independent media.
Favorite news platform by far. Oh, it's not even close.
The Young Turks. It's the largest online news show in the world.
I watched you guys before I had a channel at all.
And I watched Cenk, so Cenk's really the start of it all.
Big shout out to Cenk from Young Turks.
Cenk Uygur, founder of TYT, a man who probably needs no introduction.
Cenk, so great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you, David.
Fan you worked for a long time, man.
Anna Kasparian is one of the most followed and influential progressive women online.
I love Anna.
Your presence has been essential for me to really grow.
Do all of you know the Young Turks? This is why what Young Turks are doing is so important.
I've watched you for many years. You are insightful. I thank you for that.
I was going to introduce myself, but it sounds like you guys might know us.
Have you been drinking anything today?
No, I hadn't drank in 3 years.
Good for you. Congratulations.
Yeah. Until today.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Nice elevator music. I'm loving it. Although I'd love the house music to make a reappearance. Bart, no pressure, no pressure. Anyway, I'm gonna read some comments since I haven't been doing a great job reading them so far. The show's been a little bit hectic today. Let's go to Mohit Bake, who says, I get the concerns about data centers, but I work in tech, so I'm financially biased. Compromise. Tech companies fund their own water/power via desalination rain capture and private grids, no public utilities or taxpayer subsidies. I like most of your solutions. I'm not really sure we need AI. No one asked for this. You know what I'm saying? So I get that you work in tech. I'm sure you'll still be gainfully employed if we don't pursue AI. But it doesn't matter. We didn't get a say in it. It's happening anyway. And it's going to be incredibly disruptive when it comes to the job market. And when people don't have livelihoods, when they feel like they have no hope, things start to get really scary. So I'm worried. So we're going to get into that topic a little later in the show. Pakistani American Hawk Sentinel says, AIPAC and all you Hasbara clowns are melting down. Your precious, most moral army just got caught red-handed violating Palestinian prisoners at Sid Timan. They said that IDF uses sticks and trained dogs. Everyone knew about the dogs. Even Bermuda Triangle folks, would exist. Folks, I can't really understand what this is. Even Bermuda Triangle folks, if they exist, knew about New York Times dropping the full horror report on Netanyahu's team, is screaming defamation, lawsuit like cowards. Anna, the TYT queen, with all your receipts, you should DM the New York Times today and team up. 2 truth bombs equals lawsuit. So look, I'm not going to team up with the New York Times. They're going to be fine, okay? I hope they're not going to be intimidated because that's what this lawsuit is really about. But if it really does make its way to court, which would be amazing, I think they've got the resources to defend their reporting. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. YTP Renewed says left and right were undefinable from the start. 100%. I used to feel so salty toward people who rejected both sides of the political aisle, but I understand them now a lot more than I've ever understood them. So apologies for not getting it previously. But anyway, free yourselves, guys. Try to free yourselves from seeing everything through a partisan lens. Have your values. Don't let go of your principles and your values. That's important. But being tribal in your politics is like a prison, and you'll find yourself cheerleading people who are screwing you just as badly on some of these issues as Republicans are. Not all issues. I want to be clear about that. There are definitely issues that I think Democrats are better on. However, what really changed my perspective on our political system and the Democratic Party overall was that the genocide started under Biden. It started under Biden. Seeing the behavior of the Democratic Party during a genocide, while they aid and abet it, they fund it, they support it, they make excuses for it, I can never look at them the same again. I'm sorry. Anyway, let's get to our next story. Well, Tulsi Gabbard allegedly got raided and then later didn't get raided. That was according to Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who made a pretty explosive claim about the CIA raiding the office of the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, but she later walked her statement back. So what's going on here? And to be honest with you all, even after walking her statement back, even after the claims of Tulsi Gabbard being raided were denied, I'm still pretty worried about what's going on here. So let me make my case. Let me give you the details. So to understand how this story developed, we need to understand the context, right? So it started with a CIA whistleblower making a pretty explosive claim that the CIA seized several documents that were being reviewed by Tulsi Gabbard's office. Ooh, interesting. What kind of documents are we talking about here? Now, I initially thought these documents had to do with the war on Iran, but no, that's not what this is about. So the CIA whistleblower, his name is James Erdman III, who was a former CIA employee and is now the co-founder of the conservative action group Feds for Freedom, said that the CIA had removed documents from ODNI during a congressional hearing regarding the agency's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I want to show you that video and then we'll discuss.
When the dig ceased operations, the CIA also took back 40 boxes of JFK files and MK Ultra files being processed for declassification by DNI Gabbard.
Okay, so documents that were being processed for declassification. What is that about? Well, if you all can remember, Trump had said that he was going to be far more transparent. Let's all stop for laughter. But he ordered the release of all remaining documents pertaining to the JFK, RFK, and Milk assassinations. Now, according to Tucker Carlson, we don't have all of the documents that were promised, certainly not when it comes to the JFK files, which I think is interesting. But nonetheless, Trump also called for the documents related to MK Ultra, which was the CIA's mind control experiment program, to also be released. And as head of the ODNI, Gabbard was reviewing some of these documents before releasing them to the public, the declassified version. Now, Republican Florida Representative Anna Paulina Luna expressed her absolute outrage over this. She was on News Nation, where she said the following. Take a look.
You also have some news coming out of the CIA that you'd like to share.
Yeah, so we were actually just notified that the CIA went in and took documents out of ODNI, multiple boxes pertaining to the JFK files as well as MK Ultra. The reason why this is troubling is there was an executive order that the president had directed the full declassification of JFK, but then also to the MK Ultra files. The CIA famously has said that, all documents were released and other documents had been destroyed. So these are allegedly those documents that apparently never existed, and so very troubling. I did just talk to Chairman Comer, and we are sending in the next hour or so a preservation of documents request to the CIA. I have calls into the White House to the director of the CIA himself, and so obviously as this develops, we'll keep everyone up to date, but strange times we're living in.
Absolutely strange times we're living in. Now, she also posted the following on social media, on X. So she says that given the nature of documents in question, we are sending a preservation notice. Docs needed to be returned to ODNI, given that ODNI was given direction and authority by the president to declassify RFK, MLK, and JFK documents regarding MK Ultra. These were documents specifically requested by my task force and currently being used for our investigation. And her concerns were echoed by others, namely Jesse Waters on Fox, who posted about it and then later deleted it, which prompted Olivia Colman, the press secretary for the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, commented on a Fox News report about the allegations, writing on X, "This is false. The CIA did not raid the DNI's office." Okay. Whether it was a raid or not, I don't really care. Did the CIA go into her office and take documents? And I want to know why they did that. I want to know why they did that. Whether it's a raid or not, who cares? I mean, a raid, did I ever think that like federal agents like busted down her door and like pointed weapons at her and like, took her document? No, I don't think that happened. But the fact of the matter is that the CIA went into her office and took documents out, specifically the documents that are supposed to be declassified and released to the public. What is that? Luna went on to clarify after the press secretary for the Office of the ODNI made their statement that there was no raid. Clarification: took documents that ODNI has jurisdiction over. Also, this did not happen today and was not a raid. However, it did take place, and we are just being made aware of it based on reporting. And that's a problem, right? That's a problem. The CIA is out of control, like totally out of control. Oh, the CIA doesn't want the release of MK Ultra documents? MK Ultra, the CIA mind control garbage scandal that we have in our history. Oh, they don't want those documents to be declassified and released to the public. What a shocker. Wow. Out of control. Out of control. Okay, so Luna also responded to Nick Sorter, a conservative media person, for saying that Luna was making things up for attention. She says, this is false. I never claimed a raid was made. Show me one clip when I say that. Who cares? Who cares if it's a raid or not? The point is the documents were taken out of her office, documents that are supposed to be released to the public after being declassified. So she continues, ODNI did confirm docs were taken that were under their jurisdiction. That is a problem. Also, this is directly based off whistleblower testimony and ODNI. I don't know what low-level staffers you were talking to, but this was directly confirmed, hence the preservation of documents letter from oversight signed by the chairman of the oversight committee. Okay, I don't think Luna is doing anything wrong here. In fact, Luna is doing what I think every member of Congress should do, which is demand answers about documents that were taken out of Tulsi Gabbard's office, but were supposed to be released to the public after being declassified. Like, we need to understand why that happened. So I'm sorry, like I've got issues with Anna Paulina Luna on other issues, but on this, I don't think she's the bad guy. She wants answers. And honestly, I would like to see members of Congress demand answers more often. The CIA has yet to respond to these comments or, explain why they took the documents in the first place. However, they did offer a full-throated condemnation of the CIA whistleblower who embarrassed them for their out-of-control behavior. And I don't really care to read it, to be honest with you. So I'm not going to. Instead, we are going to just acknowledge the fact that people under Tulsi Gabbard entered her office and took documents under her jurisdiction that we're supposed to be able to see eventually after they're declassified. We need answers. It's that simple. Anyway, we got to take a break. When we come back, I'll probably read some comments and we'll get into that AI debate. It's going to get real spicy. Come right back. What's up, everyone? All right, let's go to 5 Alarm Fire, who says the number of special counsels that will need to be appointed after Trump's term will be staggering. The other thing is, and don't misunderstand what I'm saying here, because I do think that people in government who do bad things need to be held accountable. But also at the same time, I am worried that once Trump is gone and this term is over, the political elite are going to waste all this time, engaging in investigations and special counsels and this and that. And it's like our country is falling apart. And so I don't know. I'm of two minds of this, because on one hand, I want accountability. On the other hand, what our politicians love to do is give us the illusion of governance. That's why they hold so many hearings, but never really pass legislation other than legislation to screw us and help out corporate interests. So they do the hearings to get their soundbite. They're super active on social media. Total dorks like Senator Ted Cruz have their own podcast. And it's like, do you want to be a celebrity or do you want to represent the American people? So I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, I loathe Congress. I want them out. Just vote them all out. New batch, please. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Lady AF in our member section writes in and says, kind of sucks being right about this kind of stuff. And she's referring to Ken Klippenstein's reporting about the administration looking to label American citizens domestic terrorists for being too critical of things that Trump likes. Love your neighbors, especially the ones you don't like. Lady AF, that is exactly right. And that is a challenging thing to do. I totally understand that. But try to have empathy for your fellow Americans and save the ire for the people in positions of power who continuously screw us. Rupert199 says the intelligence main concern is sympathy for Iran in regards of discontent. They know Americans are angry with the whole situation, as they should be. And I think you're right, Rupert. I really do think that this is an effort to intimidate and silence individuals who have been vocal in criticizing this war. Now, I think that what we should do is really help to inform everyone about what their rights are, because we still have our constitutional rights. And so we can't allow them to intimidate us. I will never allow anyone. I live in America. I believe in our Constitution. I love this country. I genuinely do. And so the idea that I'm going to let, either a foreign country or these subversive, nefarious creatures in the Trump administration rob me of my rights to speak my mind, no, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So don't let them scare you. That's my number one piece of advice. All right, we got to talk about AI. This is something that I want to do more and more coverage of because it's an important story. And luckily, there was a debate about it yesterday between Tucker Carlson and Mr. Wonderful. That's Kevin O'Leary. So let's get into it.
I'm just very concerned about replacing people, their purpose for living, which is to create, with machines. That seems like hell to me. How is this capitalism? If taxpayers are paying for some of it, how is that capitalism? That seems...
I think that's no different than building an apartment building downtown in Austin. You can get incentives for that too, and that's just part of how it works. You can debate
How is that capitalism? How is that free market? If politicians are handing you other people's money to do it, how is that capitalism?
Yeah, that's a good question. How exactly is that capitalism when you're dealing with public subsidies as opposed to private investment to, fund your little venture here? Now, Tucker Carlson decided to spar with Kevin O'Leary, otherwise known as Mr. Wonderful. He's a Canadian businessman, and the topic of discussion was AI, specifically AI data centers, and the impact of AI on the American workforce. What really stood out to me, though, throughout this entire conversation/debate was honestly O'Leary's lack of concern for American jobs, American workers, and his sense of entitlement when it comes to tax breaks and subsidies. And also the reality that Tucker, really is worried about AI. And I say the reality because a lot of people think that it's all for show, he's a phony, he's a fake. I don't get that sense when it comes to certain topics. And this topic is one of them. Now, why do I say that? Let's go all the way back to 2018, when Tucker Carlson was discussing this topic with Ben Shapiro.
You make specific reference to truck driving and the fact that there are going to be these automated cars on the roads. So would you, Tucker Carlson, be in favor of restrictions on the ability of trucking companies to use this sort of technology specifically to, sort of artificially maintain the number of jobs that are available in the trucking industry?
Are you joking? In a second. And I maybe would make up some pretext for public consumption, like, oh, they're dangerous. The technology is not quite finessed. No. But the truth would be, I don't want to put 10 million men out of work because you're going to have 10 million dead families, and the cascading effect from that will wreck your country.
Okay, so that was 8 years ago. And so anyone who's going to make the argument that Tucker is making these claims about AI because he plans on running for president and he doesn't actually mean it, really, that's the long game, I guess, because 8 years ago, he was hatching this plan to run for president and present himself as something he really isn't. I think he actually does care. And he's actually worried because a lot of people have already started losing their jobs as a result of AI, and it is going to get worse. So he wants to know what we're going to do about that. With that in mind, O'Leary has been embroiled in a massive controversy in the state of Utah. And I feel so awful for this community because I saw what they went through in a public hearing where they weren't even given an opportunity to make their case against this. But basically, O'Leary is building a massive data center in Box Elder, Utah. So he has purchased 40,000 acres in order to do this. during his debate with Tucker, he's like, oh, maybe we don't really need all that land. Maybe we could develop something else on that land. Okay. The project was recently approved by Box Elder County commissioners despite protests from members of the community, because members of the community don't matter. Okay, when it comes to government, whether we're talking about local government, state government, federal government, they don't care about us. All they think about is money, 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 business investment, business investment. And remember, we're talking about an AI data center here. So the same claims and BS that we've heard time and time again about how we must subsidize this because it's going to provide jobs. The whole point of AI is to do away with human labor to maximize profits for companies. That is the point. So how are you going to recycle that same BS talking point? Anyway, we're going to get to that. So the local community in Box Elder, Utah, has been protesting this data center aggressively. I kind of love their spirit, to be honest. And they're concerned about the loss of jobs, the amount of energy this data center will require, surveillance, and the amount of land that this requires. And they're also worried about the impact on the environment, as O'Leary's proposed data center will require 9 gigawatts of energy to function when it's fully built. If you're wondering, I don't know what 9 gigawatts means. How much energy is that? That's double Utah's current energy usage for the entire state. Okay, so Tucker Carlson brought up much of this in the context of his, opening monologue and subsequent debate with O'Leary. So let's first dive into the topic of job losses.
The two examples you gave are examples of a machine replacing human labor and doing a better job than any person could do.
Oh, Tucker, that's horrible.
Which is great.
Well,
but hold on.
That's my point.
Well, I know it's your point. And I can see the marvel of it. But it raises the question, which won't go away, which is, okay, now that machines do what people do better than people did, what do people do?
Would you prefer in the next 5 years that China have more compute power than we do? Even though the use and the outcome and jobs and everything else we're talking about is unknown? Or would you prefer the United States of America and their allies in North America had more compute power to develop AI?
It depends. Whichever makes the United States happier, freer, and more prosperous, I guess, is the answer.
Well, do you know what the answer to that is? What do you think it is?
I'm not sure that we know. I know that reducing this question to a competition between the United States and China is a very quick way to derail people from the core questions, which revolve around whether or not it's a good idea.
Yeah, for real. I mean, yes, please do away with my livelihood. Please do away with it, because I really want to make sure that we're beating China in our ability to compute. Come on, man. I thought the very beginning of that video, by the way, was very telling. If you guys don't mind, can you cue it up again? I just want to play the first 15 or so seconds where he's like, that's my whole point. Yeah, we know it's your whole point. He's basking in the future of people literally losing their jobs and their livelihoods. Take a look.
The two examples you gave are examples of a machine replacing human labor and doing a better job than any person could do.
Oh, Tucker, that's horrible.
Which is great.
Well, but hold on. That's my point.
Well, I know it's your point. And I can see the marvel of it. But it raises the question, which won't go away, which is,
yeah, that's my point. Oh, Tucker, would be so bad if all these people lost their jobs, right? Sarcastically saying that. Amazing. By the way, this is the guy who was on the CNN panel with me and declared that Americans don't care about the Epstein files, so let's just move it along. Right. So Tucker later answers O'Leary's question and makes a pretty great point about, in my opinion, it's a great point about UBI, universal basic income, replacing, an earned paycheck. And he also talks about something else I think needs to be considered. Take a look.
Has more economic power now than the United States, probably has more military power. I didn't want either of those things to happen. I'm a little bitter at the American business community, which allowed them to happen, but they happened, so here we are. There's not much I can do about it. My focus remains, however, on, is it good for the United States? Is it good for us? Does it make people happy? And I don't understand what people are going to do for a living if machines are going to be able to do most things that people currently do better than people do them. Like, what is the answer? And a lot of people are honest enough to say nothing. We're just the oligarchs are gonna send out checks to everybody, the bread and circuses, and everyone's just gonna kind of stay home and be obedient. But I don't know that is a good idea, and I don't know that it works.
I think you're raising a great point. It's a wonderful debate, and it's certainly going on, but it's analogous to the narrative that must have been happening back when the Model T Ford rolled off the assembly line, and everybody that had a buggy looked at it and said, oh no, this is going to wipe me out, and there'll be no work for me.
Okay, that's a stupid point. What O'Leary said there was stupid, and he thinks we're stupid enough to buy it. So the Model T wasn't created because Henry Ford was like, oh, I really want to do away with human labor, so let me build a car. That's not what happened. In fact, the development of automobiles led to manufacturing jobs in the United States. That is true. And of course, enhanced our ability to travel. The whole point of AI is to make human beings irrelevant, to make labor irrelevant. The other thing about AI that I'm really worried about is I feel like it's already making people dumber. Because rather than use your own critical thinking skills, rather than engage in the art of writing something yourself, which stimulates your brain, let me ask Grok. Let me ask Grok. Hey, Grok, is this true? How about you think for yourself? How about you learn the craft of actually researching something and finding credible sources? But no, everyone just wants easy answers, and those easy answers are going to screw you. But anyway, what I didn't expect was for Tucker Carlson, of all people, who's a hardcore capitalist, he doesn't hide that, to go after Kevin O'Leary, or take him to task. I shouldn't say go after. Take him to task over the subsidies and tax breaks he's enjoying right now. And the reason why I say that it surprised me is because I'm so used to conservative Republicans providing cover for this taxpayer robbery that's been taking place in this country for quite some time now. And I'm glad he's now speaking out against it pretty vocally. So take a look.
I've never seen a tax like this. I know you have, but I haven't experienced it. And I'm hiring.
Well, I mean, if you take money from taxpayers, you should expect them to weigh in too and take their complaints seriously and not just dismiss them as agents of China.
And you're right, but this has been going on. Incentives state by state in every sector happen, even real estate.
Not incentives. It's a forced transfer of wealth from taxpayers to people who are richer than taxpayers. So like.
No, they're not.
Of course they have
you get a tax break to create 2,000 jobs, and the taxpayer wouldn't do it if it wasn't the long-term outcome.
The taxpayer has no choice. The taxpayer has no
choice. They can say no. That's not what happened.
Well, they tried to say no to this data center, and they got laughed at. And then the governor, Spencer Cox of Utah, who really is a kind of living symbol of our ruling class, said that the state has an obligation to do this, and basically, as you are doing, waved away concerns as like foreign propaganda, when I think they're probably non-crazy people who live in Utah are like, why is this good for me?
I mean, he makes a really great point. And this was something that Trump kind of sort of did with, was it Intel? I think it was Intel, if I'm not mistaken. There was one company that he wanted to save from complete failure because he wants them to make semiconductor chips here in the United States. But the argument was, if we bail you out, well, then, this country has a stake in the game, right? We like own shares of your company, which I think is the right way to do it if you're going to provide capital for private industry. Taxpayer capital for private industry should result in us owning shares of that company. It's not that difficult. It doesn't have to be that way. If you want to be privately funded entirely, great. But you can't make the argument that like, oh, these tax incentives, it's because we're creating jobs. No, you're not. The whole point of AI is to prevent human labor, prevent a situation where humans are getting paid for their work because they'll be replaced by AI-powered robots. I see them all over the street already. Can't stand those ugly ass Waymos with their disgusting cameras pointed in every freaking direction. And those stupid little carts, those Palantir carts delivering food. I want to kick them into the street every single time I see them. But nonetheless, I just noticed that O'Leary has no real answers to the questions that Tucker Carlson is asking. And he's currently going on like a media tour in order to, in order to trick people into thinking this is great. This is actually a great thing. It's actually awesome that your power bill has increased significantly because there's a data center in your community. But my favorite part of this entire debate was O'Leary pretending as though Americans absolutely love the development of AI. And all of this controversy surrounding my own AI data center in Utah is totally manufactured by China. I love saying China like Trump. Anyway, take a look.
Let me give you some names here, Tucker. Party for Socialism and Liberation. Apparently shares offices with the CPP all over my social media.
Okay, wait, let me just stop you there. So if you're saying that you're being criticized by agents of a foreign government, let me just add my empathy, in fact, having been the subject of that, quite a bit over many years.
I'm well aware.
If you're that concerned about the Chinese, what percentage of the materials in the data center come from China?
Less and less all the time. That's one of the things the administration is trying to do. The turbines are European made or American made. The pipelines are obviously American made. The chips are certainly American made. The actual build out of the facilities mostly American made. I don't think there's a whole lot of, we're not mining Bitcoin here. So
right. No, I mean, I think I read it's about 40 or 41%. So China is benefiting from, most purchases that most of us make because it's the world's largest manufacturer. And that would also include the construction of data centers.
Kind of reveals the whole shell game here, right? The whole argument about how we have to do this to compete with China kind of collapses as soon as you figure out how much China benefits from building AI centers here in the United States. Fascinating. Really interesting stuff. And to O'Leary's paranoia about, China's behind this. Gabby Finlayson, who's one of the community members protesting O'Leary's data center in Utah, put out a statement in a video mocking O'Leary, as she should do, because, just total clown show. Here's what she said. If we were Chinese operatives, we would be the worst operatives in the entire world. Someone alert Beijing that the payment portal to my colleague, Jackie Morgan, and its annex bills is somehow broken. It's laughable. It's laughable. No, there's rage in the community because this data center is not going to benefit them and is being constructed at their detriment. They know that, they see that, and they're calling it out. And it's telling that their local government couldn't care less. We got to take our final break. We'll come back with one more, an important story about Thomas Massie. Don't miss it. We'll be right back.
There's always been in this country 30 to 35% idiot.
All right, I don't know what I'm reading right now, okay, to be honest with you. But one of our members, Mike Rotunda, 6264, says, Anna, I don't want you to think I'm a nut. So look up Forbes magazine article in 2017 about US Navy plasma ball weapon technology. I do want to look that up. So I don't know what that is. I will look that up because I'm super curious now. Anyway, let's go to Bumblebee Tunes, TYT Essentials member, thank you, who says, Anna, cacio e pepe or mac and cheese? I say both. I'm a big slut for mac and cheese. I love mac and cheese. But if I want to get fancy, I'll go with the other option. But that's like by the way, you can make it at home. Cacio, I can never say it right. You get what I'm saying. It's so easy to make. It's like 3 ingredients. It's the pasta, the pepper, and the cheese, which the name of the cheese is totally escaping me at the moment. Anyway, Solo Rick in our member section says, this is the text I got. Hi, I'm Jen. Curious how folks in Texas are seeing Israel and Iran right now. To a quick exchange. Stop to end. I'm scared, y'all. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, don't respond to text messages like that. It's a bad idea. Let's get back to the show.
China.
Welcome back, everyone. Noble Mobile wants you to know just how rotted your brain is. So if you're interested in figuring that out, just go to tyt.com/switch, or you can scan that QR code. And if you're wondering, what are you talking about, Anna? I have repeated this live read a billion times, so you should know by now, but I'll tell you again. Basically, you're on your phone too much, and their brain rot index will let you know how much you're spending your time on your phone, and they'll help you kind of take control of that so you're not on your phone as much. So check that out, tyt.com/switch. All right, let's get to our next story.
If you're going to call yourself America First, but then betray America First every single time you get a chance, just like Marjorie Taylor Greene did, then you don't deserve to win your seat. Go run as a Democrat. This is what you want to do. You're from Massachusetts. You're not from Kentucky. Go run as a Democrat.
I'm not really sure that Congressman Thomas Massie has betrayed the Republicans. But since we're on the topic of betrayal, hey, Benny, you want to talk about your marriage? Anyway, let's move on to what this story is really about, which is, man, propagandists are out in full force against Congressman Thomas Massie, who is now dealing with a pretty tough primary challenge from an AIPAC-funded Republican in the primary for this House seat. Okay, so this is a House seat in Kentucky. Currently, the incumbent is Thomas Massie, but Thomas Massie is a unicorn in Congress in that, you know, I might not agree with many of his policies. However, he's principled. And so he wanted the release of the Epstein files and was willing to work with Democrats. He was willing to reach across the aisle to make that happen. Trump didn't like that because he wanted to cover up the Epstein files. I guess Betty Johnson would like to aid and abet that. Thomas Massie also consistently votes against spending. Because unlike the liars who pretend to be worried about the debt or the deficit in Congress, Thomas Massie is actually sincere about it. So he doesn't want to keep going deeper and deeper into debt to fight Israel's wars. And that made Trump real mad. Okay. So that's what's going on here. And that's what led to Miriam Adelson, who bought Trump like a whore, to start funding a primary challenger to Thomas Massie. Because the one and only thing Miriam Adelson cares about is degenerate gambling, of course. That's how she built her fortune, and Israel. Yeah. So she didn't like the fact that Thomas Massie didn't want to keep shelling our resources out to a genocidal regime that doesn't benefit our country in any way, shape, or form. So she poured a lot of money into his challenger. So Massie's increasingly public breaks with Trump have made him the target of these Trump-aligned groups. MAGA Kentucky, which has spent $5.6 million on top of $1.3 million from the Galrin campaign itself. So Ed Galrin is the individual who's challenging Massie in the GOP primary in Kentucky. Additionally, the Republican Jewish Coalition has spent $4 million on ads supporting Ed Galrin, with AIPAC, Super PAC United Democracy Project spending another $2.6 million, and that's according to Ad Impact. So the race has become incredibly gross and messy. So there have been attack ads on both sides. The attack ads coming from the Israel lobby funded shill. Super gross. They put out an AI ad that made it seem like Thomas Massie was in a sexual relationship with AOC and Ilhan Omar. But in total, more than $25.6 million has been spent on ads in this primary race. And that's also according to Ad Impact. So both campaigns are combined for that figure. So this makes it the most expensive US primary in American history. And it got messier after Axios published a hit piece on Massie based on unfounded claims. A woman who is not credible made claims about him that I'm not going to repeat here. It was very obviously a hit piece. But according to Axios, others have called into question her credibility. She claimed, let me just read them because you guys should decide for yourselves if you think they're ridiculous. I think they're ridiculous. And I find it gross that Benny Johnson denied or provided cover for Trump when he was accused of far worse by many more women. But these like super flimsy, frivolous claims you're going to use to attack Thomas Massie. Yeah, we know how your bread is buttered, homeboy. We know. So according to Axios, Cynthia West, a former girlfriend of Massie's, accused him this week of offering her $5,000 to drop a wrongful termination complaint against his close ally, Representative Victoria Spartz. So apparently Massie, when they were dating, got his girlfriend hired by, Spartz's office. The two began dating shortly after his wife had passed away in December of 2024. And then in December, Massie allegedly arranged for her to work in Representative Spartz's office so they could be in DC together. In January of last year, the two broke up after Massie became, in her words, emotionally abusive because she refused to engage in behavior I wasn't comfortable with. Yeah, that's pretty vague. Okay, so it's obviously a hit on him in order to like destroy his candidacy. And by the way, she was later fired by Spartz's office, she said, because the complaint of the toxic work environment, Spartz's decision to hire a non-citizen for a district director job, and the representative's insistence on getting involved in Ukraine's elections. Okay, whatever. I'm not interested in West. I personally don't care what she has to say. And I don't find her claims credible because they're vague. They're super vague. And it's just, the timing is questionable. Anyway, according to Axios, she was also allegedly offered a settlement from Spartz's office in the tune of $60,000, but because it came with an NDI, non-disclosure agreement, NDA, she refused. So Massie's campaign denied the allegations made by her, telling Axios in a statement, these last-minute dirty tricks don't merit a response. The trashy lies they're putting out now demonstrate how desperate they are. Now, West stated that she has not been in contact with Donald Trump or Ed Galbraith's campaign. But again, the timing of the report is super suspicious. And yesterday, Polymarket, which guys, okay, F Polymarket. Okay, seriously, I didn't even understand what Polymarket was, but now it's just a freaking degenerate betting site. Okay, it is not a poll. It's not a political poll. It's just normal degenerate gamblers gambling on politics on a website. But here's what Polymarket had posted yesterday. Justin, Thomas Massie's re-election odds are tanking amid hush money allegations from an ex-girlfriend. He's now projected to be unseated. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene is not buying it. So she says there was no hush money offered to the jealous Mrs. Massie wannabe. Thomas Massie is just being dishonestly smeared because his primary is next week and foreign money billionaires are trying to buy Kentucky's 4th district. Younger voters go out there and beat the spoon-fed Fox News viewers. But let's pivot to an actual recent poll, which does cause some concern here. So recent polls for the 4th district in Kentucky show that for the first time, Ed Galbraith beat Thomas Massie. So he came in at 48.3% and Thomas Massie came in at 43.1%. That's not good. That's really, really not good. Now the question is this Quantis Insight poll credible? And I don't know, I question most polls, to be honest with you. There were some polls that were wildly wrong in the lead up to the 2024 election, also the 2016 election, as we know. But Quantis Insights was given a B/C rating from Nate Silver for whatever it's worth. So you might think it's not an A rating, it's not credible. However, Ipsos was also given a B rating. So do with that information what you will. Polling analyst Ettinger Mentum and the New York Times questions their transparency, saying that they may be using low-cost, undisclosed opt-in panel data. I have no idea. But even Massie himself has confessed that this is an incredibly close race. And I think it communicates something really awful to the American people if Massie loses. What it communicates is a foreign lobby can literally buy our elections, even in primary races, and there's nothing you can do about it. So Massie said the race is within the margin of error. I think it's going to be close. I really do. But he believes the winner of the GOP primary will come down to voter turnout. So show up and vote. But this whole debacle has led to an online spat between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Benny Johnson. I'm not gonna read all of their back and forth to you. I'm gonna save the fun for you so you can check it out yourselves. But she says, this is a clinic on how to call out the lies of social media influencers that get paid to spew propaganda. Benny Johnson, who I thought was a friend, couldn't even give me the courtesy of asking me if any of these lies were true. TMZ and Daily Mail actually reached out, but not Benny. And Thomas Massie did not mistreat any woman, but happens to have a primary next week. So of course, out comes a story from a woman who is just jealous she isn't Mrs. Massie. So in our members section, which will happen immediately after the show ends today, I'm gonna get into Benny Johnson's response to her and his claims, but the guy is a charlatan. Like, I think most people can tell at this point. And he's not just a charlatan when it comes to his the work he puts out, if you want to call it work. He's a charlatan when it comes to his own lifestyle, who he is as a person. So members only comes after the show. Make sure you check that out. tyt.com/join to become a member. And we'll see you there.